And I think, Comrade Maduro, that it's necessary. The narrative that was built against Venezuela about being undemocratic, about authoritarianism, So, I think it's up to Venezuela to show its narrative, so that it can actually make people change their minds.
It's no secret that Nicolas Maduro and Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva have a relationship.
Are you aware that the prejudice against Venezuela is very strong? Do you realize how much criticism we faced here during the campaign for being a friend of Venezuela?
It goes far beyond simple good neighbor diplomacy.
This return of the Brazil-Venezuela relationship is complete. It's complete.
In May 2023, when Maduro came to Brazil, Lula didn't hide what he thinks about his comrade. He said that Maduro is not a bad person, that the prejudice against Venezuela is very strong, and he took the opportunity to make it very clear that Brazil's relationship with Venezuela is full. And meanwhile, presidents from several Latin American countries, like Uruguay and Chile, publicly criticized Lula's statements. But Lula, well, he wasn't intimidated. With that, he actually doubled down, calling the accusations against Maduro a negative narrative. According to reports at the time, Lula's position caused tremendous discomfort and disrupted plans to unite Brazil's neighboring countries. But now, 2 years later, with American warships surrounding Venezuela and a $50 million reward for Maduro's head, there's a question I'm sure many of you have already asked yourselves. How far would Lula or even Brazil go to protect his Venezuelan comrade? An exclusive document that leaked last week may have revealed the answer. And well, it's much more surprising than anyone imagined. And Imeri? That's the operation's name. Its main objective, to remove Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela before the Americans capture him. But how exactly did Brazil plan to do that? And would the country really make such a risky geopolitical move to protect a dictator? To understand what's really happening, we first need to look at the current military situation. And it's much more tense than many people imagine. Right now, an American fleet is positioned in the southern Caribbean. We're not talking about a few ships patrolling around there. We're talking real firepower. The United States ship Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group, the nuclear attack submarine United States ship Newport News, Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, and the missile cruiser United States ship Lake Erie. Documents reveal that this fleet carries thousands of American Marines ready for action. The official American justification is that all this military apparatus is to fight drug trafficking. But the composition of this force tells a different story. Many analysts say that this is not a fleet to fight drugs. It is meant to pressure and intimidate the Maduro regime through a show of military force. And do you want to know how Maduro responded to this pressure? In a way that no one expected? On August 25, 2025, Diosdado Cabello, the Venezuelan Minister of the Interior and Maduro's right-hand man, announced the deployment of 15,000 soldiers to the border with Colombia, and, along with them, some armored vehicles, aircraft, and drones. Everything is being moved to the states of Táchira and Zulia. He even sent some fishing boats connected to the Bolivarian militia for a naval march.
We will not let them close the beautiful door that has always been open.
My Commander General, today we are here answering a call from our Commander-in-Chief. With the fishermen of Zulia, we will prevail.
Here we come to an interesting point. If the threat is coming from the sea, why send troops to the land border? That makes no military sense. From a strategic point of view, many classify this move as militarily illogical. It doesn't make any sense to respond to a naval threat in this way. But then, what would be the real purpose? Well, there are three possibilities here. The first would be a strategic diversion. In other words, they want to force the Americans to split their attention between the naval threat in the north and a new land front in the west. The second would be political support for the Colombian president, Gustavo Petro, who, according to documents, is doing poorly in the polls, and he might need a crisis at the border to stay in power. And finally, the third, and perhaps the most revealing of all, is to guarantee a safe escape corridor for Maduro in case his regime collapses.
I know what it is to seize the skies,
And it's precisely this third possibility that's gaining strength when we look at what was revealed about Operation Imeri. According to information published exclusively on the Defisa.net website, there was a secret meeting between the Brazilian Chancellor Mauro Vieira and his Venezuelan counterpart Ivan Gil in Bogota, Colombia, between August 21 and 22. Officially, they were discussing Amazon cooperation, but according to the report, the real subject was something else. They were talking about Operation Imeri, named after the mountain range that divides Brazil and Venezuela. This operation was supposedly conceived as a selective evacuation plan for Maduro and part of the Venezuelan leadership. The plan had two branches. The first, of an ostensive nature, would mobilize 12 naval assets of the Brazilian Navy, including the helicopter carrier Atlantico, Niterói-class frigates, and the Bahia dock ship. This fleet would be supported by the Marine Corps Special Operations Battalion and the Combat Divers Group to establish a maritime evacuation corridor. The second option, even more audacious, would involve an aerial infiltration with a KC-390 from the Brazilian Air Force. The aircraft would assault land on a pre-selected Venezuelan airstrip. A maneuver that the military call touch and go. And there, Maduro and his closest associates would board and then fly directly to a base in Brazil. Technical documents detail that the flight would be from Boa Vista to Caracas and back, which is approximately 3,000 kilometers. They would take advantage of the KC-390's speed, which is similar to that of a commercial jet. This would create strategic surprise. But this is where the story gets even more interesting. When the report was published, the reaction on the internet was swift. News portals and social media posts all over the world echoed this information. Itamaraty, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Brazil, denied the allegations that Minister Mauro Vieira had discussed the matter. The Ministry of Defense said there is no plan underway. The website Defisa.net, later clarified that the discussion only took place within the political wing of the government, but did not involve the Ministry of Defense or the armed forces. And here is a crucial detail that went unnoticed by many. There is also information that sectors of the Brazilian Navy reacted vehemently and negatively, refusing to participate or collaborate in the extraction of Nicolás Maduro. This generated internal friction and revealed deep divisions within the armed forces. In other words, even if someone in the government thought about it, the Brazilian military said no. But why is this so important?
Comrade Maduro, I think you need to know the narrative.
Because it reveals something fundamental about the geopolitical alignment that is forming in the world. Currently, there are two main blocks forming. On one side, what they call the Western world, United States, Europe, Israel, democratic nations. On the other side, what some analysts classify as the axis of resistance, Venezuela, Russia, Iran, North Korea. And where does Brazil fit into this equation? To answer that, let's first look at Venezuela. It's clear Maduro isn't fighting alone. Russia has already opened a factory to produce Kalashnikov rifles on Venezuelan soil. In 2025, Iran provides drone technology. Documents mention models like the Mohajer 6, which the Venezuelans call the Ansu 600, and the Shahed 131, known locally as the Zamora V1. Only the name changes. In this case, Russia's strategy is clear. They don't aim to win a conventional war against the United States. That would be logistically impossible. The goal would be to make any American intervention too costly. To create what strategists call a hedgehog defense. In this case, Venezuela would become too prickly, so to speak, for the Americans to deal with while facing the risk of an even greater escalation. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan government reacted to the bet made by the United States. Last week, Washington threatened to send military ships to the coast of Venezuela. Maduro's own regime is showing clear signs of desperation. Maduro mobilized 4.5 million people for the Bolivarian militia. But he himself admitted that he had to extend the registration deadline because many people were unable to sign up. Look, I'll translate this for you in case it wasn't clear. No one wanted to participate. The propaganda scenes include indigenous tribes enlisting with bows and arrows.
To guarantee the peace and sovereignty of our people.
Today with the same spirit as our ancestors.
Images that even became material for memes on social media. But according to the analysis of the documents, this is not just propaganda. It's also a loyalty test for public servants and party members who are pressured to enlist. The real center of gravity of Maduro's power is his Bolivarian National Armed Forces. Documents identify Vladimir Padrino Lopez, the Venezuelan defense minister, as a key figure. Military loyalty is maintained through a system that grants high-ranking officers control over sectors of the economy, and also involvement in illegal activities. But that loyalty has its limits, and the Americans know it. The $50 million reward for the capture of Maduro is not just any amount. It's on the same level reserved for global terrorist leaders. Trump is not joking around. The United States does not see Maduro as a legitimate head of state, but as an international criminal. For Brazil, this crisis has implications that reach beyond Venezuela. According to Defense Net's analysis, the United States monitors every move. With this, they position themselves to prevent any Brazilian maneuver aimed at saving the narco-terrorist dictator. The United States made it clear that if Brazil insists on carrying out any such operation, new economic and diplomatic sanctions will be imposed. Brazil faces a geopolitical crossroads. On one side, there is American pressure and alignment with the Western world. On the other, the historic leftist solidarity with authoritarian Latin American regimes. The refusal of the Brazilian military to participate in any plan to rescue Maduro suggests that the armed forces understand the consequences of ending up on the wrong side of this equation. Because in the end, this is not just a Venezuelan crisis. It's the first time in decades that rival powers have taken such an openly military stance in the region. The facts show a paranoid dictator looking for escape routes, with external allies providing weapons and military technology, and a superpower with the real capability to resolve the situation quickly if it decides to act. Operation Imeri, whether real or not, exposed an uncomfortable reality. Brazil will have to take a stand in an increasingly polarized world, between democracy and authoritarianism. Which side does Brazil want to be on? Now tell me, do you believe that this Imeri operation could really have been discussed in Bogota? Leave your opinion here in the comments. And if you liked this analysis, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with anyone you think needs to know this information. See you next time.